I'm wondering, when does it really, under this bill, when does that hunk of metal and that piece of plastic or that material become a ghost gun or a gun under this bill? Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Blumenthal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you. It becomes a ghost gun in one of two ways under this bill. One is through Section 2, upon the completion of a firearm, which is a functional firearm under Section 2. And the other is an unfinished frame or lower receiver, which we've defined as a blank casting or machine body intended to be turned into a frame or lower receiver of a firearm that requires additional machining, but most major machining operations have been completed, even though the fire control cavity of that blank casting or machine body is still completely solid or unmachined. So essentially, once major machining operations have ended, even though that fire control cavity is still blank and unmachined, and an intent for that casting or blanked is developed into be turning into a frame or lower receiver of a firearm, that is when Section 5 would go into effect. Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Smith.
I thank the representative for the answer, and just to dig down a little bit deeper then, so if I buy and forgive me if I misspeak here because I'm not a gun owner, but if I buy a lower receiver that's already been machined but still needs more work, but I have no intent to do anything further with it. I just bought it. I like how it looks. I'm going to keep it in my room, or I'll display it in my living room. But I have no intent to make a gun out of it. Based on what I heard this evening, under that scenario, and correct me if I'm wrong, that would not be a violation of this bill. Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Blumenthal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you. That is correct. If you have such an item that would require more machining to become a frame or lower receiver of a firearm, but you do not have the intent to convert it into such a frame or lower receiver, it is not yet an unfinished frame or lower receiver under Section 5.
Representative Smith.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So how is one to prove then intent? So if someone buys it, but it's machined already, and it could certainly be, if machined further, converted into a weapon or a firearm, how does one go about proving that I or you or somebody else had the intent to actually convert it to the firearm? Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Blumenthal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you, a prosecutor would prove it the exact same way a prosecutor proves intent under any other offense listed in our criminal code.
Representative Smith.
Well, I would think, thank you, Madam Speaker, I would think it'd be a tall order, because without any type of other evidence of prior intent or knowledge or capability or whatever, I think it's a tall order for police to actually make an arrest because somebody purchased a product that had the capability of becoming a gun. So that's where I'm a little concerned, and I don't know if the statistics that Representative Zabisky mentioned are accurate in terms of the prosecutions of those persons arrested with possession of a weapon. But under this particular bill, I don't know how the police would actually prosecute someone for just purchasing this product over the internet, or I don't even know if you can go into a store and actually buy these. Maybe you can. That's how little knowledge I have of this area. But it seems to me we're setting up a bill for failure. Now, I commend the committee, and I commend the gentleman who put the bill together, and I know it's been worked on by a number of folks to make this bill a lot better than certainly it was last year, and it is better. But I still think it has a ways to go in the sense of just being able to prove intent. And I'm also looking, Madam Speaker, at Section 2, subsection B, and it talks about a 30-day period or a 90-day period after the department actually publishes its regulations, I guess, that it's ready to receive the information it needs to give a serial code to the weapon. I'm thinking logically, how does one actually know when that clock starts ticking? The person who really knows when the clock starts ticking is the one who actually developed the gun or manufactured the gun. So how does one start the clock? If the gentleman understands my question, through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Blumenthal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you, the clock would start at the point at which the person completes the manufacture or the firearm, and it would last for 30 days. However, if the department, it has not yet been 90 days after the Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection has provided notice in accordance with Section 3 of the Act, which is the process for actually obtaining a serial number, then whichever is the later of those two dates, 30 days after the person completes the manufacture or 90 days after the department has provided notice, those would be the time limits for the person to contact the department and seek to provide them the requested and required information and seek to provide the mentioned serial number. Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Smith.
Again, thank the gentleman for his answer. And it's, again, just a concern I have about the ability for anybody to actually start that clock ticking. Just two more questions, if I may, through you, Madam. I know we just got the strike all language tonight, so just skimming through it, but is there any language in here that provides for any funding for any mental health issues? I know when we did the Sandy Hook, the comprehensive Sandy Hook gun bill, one of the integral components of that particular bill was to make sure that we fund the issues that we have in this state dealing with mental health and those having access to weapons. And I think, honestly, we've done a poor job in that respect. We passed the law and did some grandstanding at the time about passing that law, but the mental health aspect was kind of let go, in my opinion. And I'm wondering if there's anything in here that deals with that. Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Blumenthal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you, this bill contains no funding of any kind and does not deal with mental health. Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Smith.
And I thank the gentleman for his answer, and once again would encourage this chamber going forward that anytime we bring gun bills before the chamber and before the legislature, that we consider that aspect, because it's been shown over and over again that the issues that we have, or many of the issues that we have with gun possession and gun violence, goes back to mental health issues. So let's not ignore one of the major components and one of the major issues that we have here in Connecticut. And lastly, through you, Madam Speaker, I noticed in subsection G, it talks about a suspension of prosecution. Are we talking about the eligibility of applying for the AR program, through you, Madam Speaker?
Representative Blumenthal.
That is, through you, Madam Speaker, that is subsection G of which section?
Representative Smith.
Well, I have to put my glasses on, Madam Speaker. I still think it's under, well, it's throughout the bill, but under Section 2, subsection G, it talks about suspension of prosecution. It seems to me that would be an AR application, but it doesn't really specify AR. Just wanted to see if it is, through you, Madam.
Representative Blumenthal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you, it is not officially an AR program. It has specific requirements, including that the judge find that the violation of the relevant section is not a serious nature, and that the person charged with the violation will probably not offend in the future, has not previously been convicted of a violation of this particular section, and has not previously had a prosecution under this section suspended pursuant to this subsection. So it is a specified suspension of prosecution provision, particular to each section of this bill that it's relevant to, although it echoes other parts of our firearms law, especially with regard to the transfer of pistols and revolvers. Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Smith.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And so just to one more question as a follow-up then, just to get into the actual real world. So if somebody's been arrested, if this bill becomes law and somebody's arrested and they're appearing before the judge, they would then have to file a motion for suspension of prosecution under this particular section to ultimately, if compliant, have the charges dismissed. Is that correct, through you, Madam Speaker?
Representative Blumenthal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. They could either make such a motion or they could plead to the offense. There are a variety of ways to exercise it. The key element is the element of discretion with regard to the judge, the underlying requirements. And the idea that this provision is meant to address the situation where somebody makes an accidental or violation that's not of a serious nature, and they don't have an intent to do it, or they aren't likely to attempt to do it in the future, and that they understand the meaning of what they're doing under the suspension provision. Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Smith.
I keep saying lastly, but I hope this is the last question, Madam Speaker. Would somebody be eligible under our current AR legislation or statutes? Would they be eligible to apply for AR if this bill were to become law? Through you.
Representative Blumenthal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you, I see no reason why they would not be able to.
Representative Smith.
I thank the chamber for its time. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Will you remark further on the bill as amended? Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good to see you up there this evening.
Nice to be seen, sir. Please proceed.
I have maybe just a couple of things to say and share, and then maybe a couple of questions through you to the proponent of the bill. So I've had a number of constituents in my district who have communicated with me. As a matter of fact, I have a couple of personal friends who are firearm enthusiasts and hobbyists, and in fact, they do build their own pistols, which is, I think, where this is most often used, sometimes long rifles as well. And they're quite concerned about this bill. And I believe that there are laws already in place that ban the type of firearm that one can make and who can possess them and so forth. And I'd just like to mention on the 3D printer, you know, I think the ghost gun concept is an emotional concept. People are afraid that these things are being made all over the place, but it's my understanding that a 3D printer that's capable of making the lower portion of one of these pistols run something in the neighborhood of $1,000. So that means a bad guy who wants to make a bad gun is going to have to lay out $1,000 to buy a printer. Then they're going to have the skill and the knowledge on how to complete the manufacture of that. And then in order to make that actually fire a bullet, they're going to have to put a metal firing pin in it. And of course, as we all know, ammunition is metal, so it seems to me it would be rather difficult to get through a metal detector once it's completed. And so through you, Madam Speaker, to the proponent of the bill, if I could, just a couple of questions.
Please proceed, sir. I believe he is prepared.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So are ghost guns currently a problem in the state of Connecticut? Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Blumenthal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you. Yes, I would say so. I mentioned in my introduction to the bill that several ghost gun prosecutions have already been done where people were attempting to build them based on kits that they'd ordered online. There was a man from Willimantic who just pleaded guilty earlier last month in the District of Connecticut. There have been incidents in Southington, Torrington, and Ridgefield, and these gentlemen, they've all been men, have been caught in the act of producing these weapons. But the idea of this bill is not to wait until someone tries to sell a weapon that they've built based on a kit that they received from out of state online through a website like ghostguns.com, but to prevent the vendor like ghostguns.com or a similar company from shipping those weapons into Connecticut in a way that evades our background check systems and our other protections to ensure the serialization of firearms. So through you, Madam Speaker, I would say that yes, this is an issue, and it's one that we would like to cut off at the pass before those criminals obtain the unserialized, untraceable firearms that these kits and other methods can produce. Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Wilson.
And through you, Madam Speaker, I thank the good proponent for those answers. And through you, Madam Speaker, could the proponent tell me how many arrests there have been so far? Through you.
Representative Blumenthal.
Through you, Madam Speaker, this has not gone into law yet, but I know of about 4 or 5 incidents in this state, some of which I listed, in which these ghost guns have been, or the attempt to distribute them within the state has been prosecuted. We've also had reports from chiefs of police throughout the state, including the city of Bridgeport, that they've recovered them off of the street in the prosecution of other crimes. So while we don't have data, we have strong anecdotal evidence that these so-called ghost guns present a very real issue around our country and in this state. And I would just add that we've seen that they've been used in crimes elsewhere, particularly mass shootings that took place in 2014 and 2017 in California, and also Lieutenant Christopher Hassan, the Coast Guard lieutenant who was arrested recently for allegedly seeking and conspiring to kill a number of federal officials, was also arrested in possession of materials from which he would have been able to create an unserialized firearm in the manner that we're seeking to prevent here. Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Wilson.
And through you, Madam Speaker, again, thank the proponent for his answer. I have just one more question through you, Madam Speaker. In the last session, we learned that DESP had a backlog of over 20,000 firearm transfer forms because of the lack of staffing. I understand now that that number may actually even be approaching 30,000 of a backlog. So will DESP need to hire additional staff to process these serial number requests? Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Blumenthal.
Through you, Madam Speaker, the answer is no. DESP has been consulted with, and the fiscal note is less than $10,000 for DESP with minimal fiscal impact to any other department.